This is going to be a knife video where I reflect on the different knives I've had over the last 12 years, basically my own little knife journey. But really, it all begins with this AK. Many of you watching this, I'm guessing, have previously watched my 10 years of Counter-Strike matchmaking in 10 clips video. This AK is featured in the first clip from 2015, and what's interesting is that when I uploaded that video, I actually had no idea that this skin was still in my inventory. When I found out, I realized that it was almost certainly the skin on my account that I've had the longest. Well, today I decided to scour through my inventory history to find out when and how I got it. September 8th, 2013. That's only 26 days after skins were added to the game, and I continued to use it for the following 3 years until it was replaced with the Fire Serpent. It's a pretty funny feeling knowing that the skin continues to be on my account, and it even still has the same name tag that came with it when I bought it. This got me thinking about the different knives I've had and when and how I got each of them. So this right here was my first ever knife. It's a StatTrak Huntsman Fade. I bought it from the Steam market on the night of December 6th of 2014. This is a little bit over a year since I got the black laminate AK, and so I guess my takeaway here is that I had been playing with skins for a little bit over a year, and finally, this day was the point where I said, I'm gonna get a knife. So, this Huntsman Fade is a pattern 775. Today, I know it's classified in the guide as a 90% fade, but oof, back then, I'm trying to remember when I got this. Did guides exist? What YouTube videos existed about this? How much did I know about pattern IDs and things like that? So I don't know if I did or didn't look up different fade percentages and the concept of that before getting this knife. And so you can see that there's a lot of yellow on it and barely any blue on it. In the end, I know it's a 90% fade, so fairly middle of the road. What's interesting, knowing what the market is like today, is I remember at the time wanting a StatTrak knife because I thought the concept of having the kills carved into the knife was really cool. And I think in general the community in 2014 agreed because StatTrak knives at the time were priced higher than non-StatTrak knives, unlike today. On CS Float today, the prices for this knife seem to vary a lot, but they seem to be in the range of $300 to $350. I paid $395 for it in 2014. In the end, I had this knife for just under 3 months, trading it away on March 1st, 2015 for this. That's right, on March 1st, 2015, I was able to trade the middle-of-the-road Huntsman Fade for a Butterfly Fade. And what's most surprising is that this turns out to be a 100% fade according to the guide. It's a Butterfly Fade pattern 892. I'm not sure what fade percentage a website like CS Float would give to this pattern and where it would land between like 99 and 100, but in the guide it has it in the 100% row. And it looks really good, right? It's amazing that at the time its market value was roughly equivalent to a Huntsman Fade, and not only that, but probably less since someone was willing to trade a 100% Butterfly Fade for a 90% Huntsman Fade. Now again, at the time the Huntsman was StatTrak and this Butterfly wasn't, and I'm pretty sure in 2015, StatTrak knives were still going at a premium compared to non-StatTrak, so maybe that was part of the trade-off. It's really crazy in retrospect, since in the years since, this knife's value has risen to be thousands of dollars, whereas the Huntsman continues to be sold for less than $400. It's really incredible for me to think about that. Now, we're not done talking about the Butterfly, but I need to mention that on the same day that I made this trade, I also traded keys with some guy to buy a second StatTrak Huntsman Fade, but this time one with a higher fade percentage. I looked it up today, and this pattern 848 ended up being classified as a 99% fade. And yeah, I mean, looking at it today, I'm kind of impressed at it. It looks a lot better than the last one I had. Now, of course, today Huntsman knives are considered budget knives. Back then, though, I think they were regarded a little higher, but still, like nowhere near as highly as an M9 or a Karambit. So basically, I think probably in the time between getting my first Huntsman and getting this Huntsman is when I really began to learn more about fade percentages, and I realized like, actually, I kind of got quote-unquote a bad one. I found this funny screen capture on an old hard drive named maxfade.png showing what I suppose is a reference shot to a 100% Huntsman Fade, which I'd used to compare other listings to. To me, this shows that clearly the concept of mapping pattern IDs to fade percentages still didn't exist, or somehow I was still unaware of it. It's great that these days it's so much easier for everyone. So I got both of these knives on March 1st, 2015. Which do you like better? Because here's the twist. I ended up trading away the butterfly knife just 1 week later. I think my mindset was like, okay, if I'm going to have a high percentage fade on a knife, I guess I could pick between the butterfly knife and the Huntsman knife. Now here's where everyone, please type capital LOL, LMFAO in the comments. I think I decided I'd rather have it on the Huntsman. I don't really want it on the butterfly. What a tiny blade. And I mean, even me today, I'm like face palming and smiling as I say this because like, holy shit. The butterfly today sells for thousands, whereas today a 99% Huntsman Fade is listed on CS Float for $380. But here's the thing. I can see where I was coming from if I remove the enormous hype that exists around the butterfly knife in 2026. Back then, and still today, although I appreciated what the butterfly knife brought to the table, I didn't really think of it as an S-tier knife. If I were to make a tier list today, I place it in A tier because of its small blade. And I know a lot of people talk up the animations of the butterfly knife, and I can agree that they're sort of cool. But that's it. They're sort of cool. They're okay. I think actually the different inspecs look a bit too similar to each other, and there's a whole, yeah, I don't know, like the knife just really doesn't do it for me. I'm not trying to say it's a bad knife. A tier is still really good. It's a good knife, but I never loved it, and I still don't really love it. And so I traded it away and kept the Huntsman 99% Fade with its huge blade. And I think I'll take this moment to say how I continue to think that the Huntsman looks really, really good. It's got a big blade that looks cool, yet for some reason the community doesn't value it that highly. I agree, it's not as good looking as an M9, but it's a mystery to me why it's priced as a budget knife. So yeah, opinions on Butterfly versus Huntsman aside, can we all agree that this knife looks amazing today for under $400, especially in a world where the Butterfly is over $3,000? That listing at $380 also implies that a 99% Fade is only about $40 to $50 or so overpay compared to the 90% Fade. And to me, it's absolutely worth paying that small overpay for this 99% Fade. I'd end up keeping the Huntsman until November 6th of 2015, meaning an ownership of just over 8 months. We'll talk about what replaced it soon, but first let's take a look at what I traded the butterfly knife for. My very first Karambit. It was a minimal wear case hardened pattern 506. It's got a nice backside with a lot of blue and a fairly clean front side. Overall, I can see the compromise I reached here. I found out today that this pattern is classified as a tier 4 backside blue gem. Frankly, that seems hardly notable. Tier 4 backside, like come on. I think people are just trying to find some way to make their knife kind of sound better. But anyways, that's technically what this knife is classified as. But yeah, that doesn't seem very notable, but equivalent knives today are being sold on CS Float for about $800, which actually seems to be below today's market value compared to other Karambits that are out there. So basically it seems like today this knife isn't special in any way. Now, I've never been huge on case hardened knives, so it was funny to be reminded of owning this knife. Of course I think blue gems look amazing, but even in 2015, with what were surely more reasonable prices, I think at the time I felt they were far out of my price range. I honestly don't remember what tier 1 blue gems cost at the time, but suppose they were $5,000. Like, you know, I was in the realm of like $400, $500 knives, so the idea of $5,000 for a knife just seemed absolutely crazy. And again, like at the time, a Dragon Lore was, I think, around $1,500. I'm completely making up the $5,000 number. I don't know what a tier 1 blue gem Karambit would go for, or like a tier 2 or something like that, but yeah, my point is $1,500 felt like, if that's what a Dragon Lore costs, that is kind of the upper range of money, of the cost of skins, and so yeah. But anyway, so why did I get this? Well, Karambits were highly regarded as the best knife, much like they are today, and so I can only imagine that I wanted to find out what it would be like to own one. I remember basically feeling like I was enjoying my Huntsman, but doubted it would be a forever knife. So this knife was sort of a way to test out the Karambit waters and see if maybe one day I should consider a high-end Karambit. Here are some screenshots I took of the knife in 2015 so you can see what it looked like in CSGO. In the end though, I only ended up owning this knife for just over 2 months. I remember I never really ended up liking the finish, and I didn't place much value in the blue backside, since that was hidden most of the time. I think it arguably looks better in CS2, but even then, I can sort of understand preferring my basically max fade Huntsman over a clean, but sort of ugly, Karambit. Although for the 2 months I owned it, I had it alongside the 99% Huntsman, I never intended to own multiple knives. I think it was just an extended test drive to see which one to keep, and I decided to keep the Huntsman. In a way, this isn't that different than what I did with the Butterfly, where I had that one and the Huntsman at the same time. But the Butterfly amazingly only lasted 1 week before I decided to move on, and the Karambit lasted a full 2 months before I decided, yeah, you know what, I don't think I'm going to keep this Karambit. Just a few days after selling this Karambit on Steam, I was able to use the proceeds from that sale, plus the sale of some other keys, to snipe a factory new Howl from the Steam market. Of course, this was a world before the Steam market had buy orders. Today, you couldn't do anything like that, because if someone was dumb enough to put a Howl on the Steam market, you wouldn't be able to snipe it because a buy order would just pick it up. So for May to November, I kept playing with this Huntsman, but on November 6th of 2015, after almost a full year of maining Huntsmans, I decided to sell it on OP Skins. And I began hunting for my new knife, which I wanted to be a surefire upgrade. 10 days later, this appeared in my inventory. This is the knife that I most associate with my years playing CSGO. It's a Karambit Marble Fade Fire and Ice pattern 541, which if you look up in the guide, maps out to being a second max Fire and Ice. I remember at this point in the 10 days I took to find this knife, I was looking into, definitely I cared about fade percentages and I wanted something that I knew was called a Fire and Ice pattern. I remember being very critical when I was inspecting things in the different markets. Does it have any amount of yellow? And taking screenshots of the different things and comparing how much red does this one have compared to this one, things like that. And I don't think that at that point you could look up pattern IDs to see which knives were higher tier than others. So yeah, all of this was done manually by inspecting all of the different listings. And remember, this was in the old school inspect screen where you couldn't zoom in. But yeah, in the end, I clearly picked a good one. I doubt I knew it was second max at the time. What I knew is it's excellent. And yep, it was. I remember I was really happy with this knife and had it for just over 4 years. And I remember always feeling like I had a good knife. For me, this was kind of an endgame knife. And yeah, I think to this day, this would be an endgame knife for a lot of people. And for me too, in a different life. It's just that now, since I've already owned it, I don't want it again, and I want to try different things. Something that's interesting is although I still think the knife looks good in CS2, and I'd be happy with it, it's impossible for me to ignore the feeling I have that it looked so much better in CSGO. Specifically, I feel like in CS2 there's far less red than there was in CSGO. In CS2, there's a lot more purple, which sort of smooths out what is supposed to be a transition from blue to red. Here are some pictures from the knife in CSGO. Do you see what I mean? Do you see how, in these screenshots, it's a lot more red than it is in CS2? So yeah, in the end, I had this knife for just over 4 years. Most of my memories of playing the game with my friends are with this knife. Despite being affordable back then compared to what it is now, I hardly ever saw any other players in matchmaking with the Fire and Ice. I don't know why, because again, these days, $500 knives are considered budget knives, and yet a lot of people have these budget knives. But back then, a $500 knife was still a fairly high-end knife. And I guess that's why. But yeah, it just goes to show how things change. On December 4th of 2019, I sold this knife for $600, which I think is about the same price I paid for it in 2015. Today, it would be worth several $1,000s. So thanks for watching the video. That is a short history of the knives I've had in the past. I did just want to quickly close with the knives that I currently have. And it's very interesting to me that I say knives plural because I never thought of myself as someone that would ever need more than one knife. And indeed, when I got into skins last year, I started out with only getting this M9 Doppler. This is a Phase 3. And basically, like I think I mentioned in the video, I've always really rated the M9 highly, but since I had that amazing looking Karambit Marble Fade, the Fire and Ice, I never felt the need to switch it up. And so I never actually owned an M9 in my Counter-Strike Go history. And so with CS2, I figured, well, it was a great opportunity to get the M9. But a few days after getting the M9, I decided I actually wanted a red knife for T-side because the blue knife just felt a little bit odd on CT side. I know, it's what a first world problem. But I initially had a Skeleton Crimson Web, but after the trade-up update, I ended up getting this Ruby, which is amazing. I stretched my budget a little bit, but I figured, hey, I mean, if the Ruby is over half off compared to what it was a week ago, like, I need to get in on that. I wanted to get a knife with animations just to balance out the fact that the M9 kind of has no animations to speak of. It's just a really good looking knife, but it's very quote unquote boring in the animations department. So I played with both the Skeleton and the M9 for a few months, and that feeling of like the M9 not having many animations kind of kept coming up every time that I played on CT side. And so I decided to get a kind of a quote-unquote lower-end knife. Like the Ursus is not highly rated in the community, but I still feel like it's a good-looking blade. I don't mind the green handle. And so I got this Sapphire for just a little bit over $500, I think, which I thought was really good value. And so I just shuffle on CT side between the M9 and the Ursus. And so sometimes I'll get like an amazing looking knife with no animations, and sometimes I'll get a pretty good, okay looking knife with some fun animations. And then on T side, I always have the amazing looking and the very fun skeleton knife. So again, thanks for taking the time to watch the video. Let me know if you enjoyed it or what I could have done differently to make it a little bit better, more engaging. And, you know, if you do want to see more videos from me, definitely let me know in the comments and let me know like what kind of videos you'd like to see. And I don't plan on becoming a YouTuber, but you know, I do like Counter-Strike, and I'm happy to make a couple more Counter-Strike videos if it interests anyone.